Steve Scaffidi on this Thursday. 24 degrees at Radio City, 12 degrees tonight. That'll be our first real taste of cold weather. Is that the Arctic air blast? I don't know, but it's cold. I was cold standing outside at a Christmas tree lighting last night, so it's winter. We're hardy Wisconsinites. We can figure it out. Joining us on the line now is the senior senator from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson. Good morning.
Hello, Steve. How you doing?
Good. I know that you were in attendance at the funeral of the 41st President of the United States, George H.W. Walker Bush. I want to just get your thoughts on the president, the passing of the president, and really what that felt like being in that ceremony yesterday.
Well, I was also at the rotunda when his casket was laid there for review. But it's a real privilege. It's a real honor. I thought it was an extraordinary ceremony. I thought the tributes by John Meacham and the Canadian Prime Minister and the Senator were excellent, but George W. Bush, first of all, I've lost both my parents. I can't imagine being able to stand up and eulogize either my mom or dad and not just end up being a blubbery mess. Mm-hmm. I thought President Bush first was just walking up, tapping the casket, and then providing such a poignant speech, breaking down just a little bit at the end. It was really powerful. I had a pretty good seat. I could see it all, the speeches, but I've watched little snippets because you don't see a lot of things when you're actually in the cathedral. I thought it was a remarkable day. It's just a real privilege to be there, and I do hope that every American understands the dignity, the integrity of the entire Bush family.
I was going to ask you,
what do you think on display there?
What do you think his legacy is as the 41st President of the United States?
I think what people are talking about is probably the most consequential single-term president. What he, the moment in time in history he was there, the falling of the Berlin Wall, managing deftly, the deft management of the collapse of the Soviet Union peacefully, the reunification in Germany, not allowing Saddam Hussein's aggression against Kuwait to stand, assembling that remarkable coalition, and by the way, making them basically pay for that military action against Iraq. I mean, there were so many just achievements of President Bush, and of course, in the end, because he violated his "Read My Lips" pledge, signed on to a deal that I think in the end resulted in because of a very strong economy and strong revenue of the strong economy, we actually did have balanced budgets toward the end of the Clinton administration. I would not say that was because of Clinton. I would say a lot of that was the groundwork laid by Ronald Reagan and President Bush. So it was really a very consequential time. He was, first of all, vice president for, and just his 4 years in office, he did an extraordinary job, and he's just an extraordinary individual. One thing I thought really impressed me is, and John Meacham really pointed this out, is he really did believe that he had to do something else with his life. His life was spared by Providence when the rest of his crew lost their lives. Mm-hmm. And he just felt that he had to give back, so he left a life of privilege, went down to Texas. Interesting stories of they shared a dwelling, apparently shared a bathroom with the ladies of the evening. He didn't have to do that, and incredibly successful in all of his accomplishments. I mean, just one of those things would be remarkable. But CIA director and UN ambassador, and envoy to China, vice president, president. Just extraordinary. It makes all of us seem like unbelievable underachievers.
And we're talking to U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, the senior senator from Wisconsin. Do you think the public understands the sacrifice of all elected officials at that level, of what it requires and the commitment of so much time and energy to doing the work of the people? And sometimes there are sacrifices on the family side, but yet he was able to maintain that throughout his long life.
No, I don't think they do. We just had a dinner for the retiring senators, and I was struck. I didn't enter public life until my kids were grown, so I was there for the entire time. Every senator got up and thanked their wife for raising their kids. Mm-hmm. No, it is a tremendous sacrifice. I look at Sean Duffy with a young family. There's an awful lot of sacrifice, but truth be told, it pales in comparison to the ultimate sacrifice that so many of our young men and women offer in defense of our freedom, in serving our military. So, yeah, listen, this is something you choose to do. I don't think any of us expect anybody to feel sorry for us or really contemplate those sacrifices. But, when it's all said and done, when you have an extraordinary person like President George H.W. Bush, I do hope the American people do understand what an extraordinary person he was, how he did work hard and for the benefit of the American public, not for himself. None of this was about him at all. It was all about his sense of service because his life was spared, and just his upbringing that you had to give back to this great country, and he did that, and he set such a fabulous example for all of us.
Talked to U.S. Senator Ron Johnson on WTMJ. As the president is laid to rest at College Station, Texas today, the discussion will move forward. Obviously, the Mueller investigation is ongoing and may be coming to a conclusion. But as far as your work as a senator, where do you expect you to be focused on, the Senate to be focused on, as we finish 2018 and move to the new year, 2019?
Well, I'll continue as Chairman of Homeland Security. So, we have our priorities pretty well established: border security, cybersecurity, protecting our critical infrastructure. I just spoke at a InfoGuard event about EMP, GMD threats to our electrical infrastructure, countering extreme violence or violent extremism, and then just government oversight. So I have so much on my plate. I'm flying out to Ukraine. I'm also chairman of the European Subcommittee on Foreign Relations, so I'm flying out to Ukraine to offer America's support as Ukraine becomes under even more aggressive pressure from Vladimir Putin. So I have no, it's not a boring job, that's for sure. I have plenty of things on my plate because we have so many challenges facing this nation.
You had some comments I saw yesterday on the report from the Treasury Department about the U.S. Postal Service. I've been critical of that part of the government for a while now, and what is it showing? And I guess the big question is, what do we do about it?
Well, I'm very appreciative of what Secretary Mnuchin's trying to do here. The task force took their time, actually analyze the problem. There's not a real good, strong problem-solving skill set here in Washington, D.C. He brought one to this problem. So they're just laying out the reality, and it's an ugly reality. Congress, in its lack of wisdom, the 535 board members trying to micromanage the post office does a terrible job. So they passed a reform in 2006 to supposedly fix the post office. Did nothing, absolutely did not accomplish that objective. So, what the Secretary is laying out is here's the ugly reality, the financial instability, unsustainability of the postal system, and they're laying out things that we're going to have to do to stabilize it. And by the way, it's a large organization, but it's not unmanageable if you bring basic business principles and have a governing board that actually works and not being micromanaged by a bunch of people with special interests, parochial interests here in Congress. So, we've got to set the post office in terms of governing body more free so they can actually do the things that any business in that situation with dramatically declining volume, inability to price their products properly in the marketplace. We got to give them the authority to do that without a taxpayer subsidy.
What is the reason why, you mentioned the part about pricing their products responsibly, why that has not happened?
Well, because you have a number of businesses, and they certainly, wrote some pretty nasty letters and op-eds about me last time this was around, that have subsidized their business model on taxpayer subsidies, basically, on that model. And I know that, supposedly the taxpayer's not subsidizing anything to the post office now, but the post office is going a great deal into debt. Who do you think is going to bail them out? So, the reality situation is, every dollar that the postal system goes into, has a loss, that's going to be an obligation of the American taxpayer, probably. And so we actually have to fix this problem, and we have to ignore the businesses that are clamoring for taxpayer subsidies on their business model. You take a look at their competitors, UPS, FedEx, they've actually increased prices. They're doing just fine. And people are using them, and they have to hone their process. So we need to make sure that the postal system can operate more as a business and actually generate profits enough to, for example, afford the capital expenditures to replace their fleet. There are a lot of problems with the postal system, but again, Congress supposedly fixed it in 2006, and here we are, literally 12 years later, but we've known this has been a big problem for at least 6 or 7 years, and didn't fix the problem. So Secretary Mnuchin is actually trying to provide long-term stability with basic business principles, basic business models, without a taxpayer subsidy, and I applaud him for it.
Got a couple of minutes left with U.S. Senator Ron Johnson. I know that you are always very focused on the deficit and deficit spending. I saw one of your presentations a couple of years ago on the specifics of the problem. Are we getting any closer to trying to move in the direction we used to be focused on as conservatives and Republicans and trying to bring that number down?
Well, the number one component of a solution is economic growth. So we have come out of the doldrums of the Obama administration where we were growing so slow, particularly when we should have had explosive growth after such a deep deficit. And we've done that by, first and foremost, we stopped adding to the regulatory burden. We've actually reduced it a little bit. That brings a lot of optimism and certainty and stability to the economy, and then we made our tax system more competitive. And by the way, I've got to give a huge shout-out to Howard Markline. I've been, ever since we passed our tax bill here in the federal government, which created disparity in terms of C-corps, the large corporations versus pass-through, the smaller businesses, in terms of their ability to deduct state and local or state income taxes. Howard Markline led the charge and got that passed through the special session, where now we'll have equalized treatment. So my big shout-out to Howard. I've been working with those guys long and hard over the last year, and he got it accomplished, so appreciate that.
The senior senator from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson, always great to talk with you. Have a great Christmas holiday, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Have a great day.